It is another wonderful day. Hello, good afternoon, and warmly welcome to Live Chat with Paul, live on ETV Ghana, your world of quality entertainment. And it is also live on facebook.com/ETVGH. And this is your most inspiring, motivating, and empowering show. We have another exciting show for you today, so you don't want to miss a second of this show because this is going to be inspiring, empowering, and motivating. Let's kickstart with our quote of the day by Bernard Kelvin Clive. And that was a quote on curriculum vitae or resume. And if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we had a show on our purposeful living. We discussed how to prepare for a job interview. But we realized that before you even get that call to attend that job interview, you need to write a compelling CV that will let the employer say, okay, let's try you, come for a job interview or something like that. So today we realize that we have to go back and look at how to write a compelling CV or resume. So today on Purposeful Living, that will be our topic, and we have that great man who was on the show 2 weeks ago to help us do exactly how to write a compelling CV on our Purposeful Living today. So stay with us. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we will start doing that. This is Live Chat with Paul, and this is the Purposeful Living segment where we help you to live a purposeful life. We try to empower you, inspire you, and encourage you to do the things you ought to do. And today on Purposeful Living, we have an HR consultant and the founder for Dreams Africa. He was with us last 2 weeks, and he is back here again to help us do certain things. And his name is Kweku Edem Damanka. And as I said, he's the founder for Dreams Africa and also an HR consultant. Edem, welcome to Live Chat.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you again.
Yeah, and I must say good afternoon to your discerning viewers and listeners out there.
Right, I guess they respond to that. I realized that when we gave the quote by Bernard Kelvin Clive, you were a bit smiling. I think he was talking about not the CV that will do the magic, but your skills or something like that.
Yeah, so Bernard Kelvin Clive is a good friend. So when I meet him, I think we'll speak more about that.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful quote, and it speaks to the substance of what we actually do. So basically, my understanding of what he said is that you shouldn't just look at the CV, but sometimes you have to look beyond the CV, which we refer to as the resume, because you talked that, I'm sure. So beyond the resume, what is the substance in the people that we are engaging that talks about their talent and then the visions that he spoke to? So I think he's not saying anything too far away from what we're going to have a conversation on. Yep. But obviously a balance of the two is what is required. You should be able to write a good resume, and when you have the talent and the visions. Because there are people who are able to write good resumes, but they are not good when it comes to delivery. And when you meet them even at interviews. And there are some who are very good, but also not good at writing resumes. So actually we advocate for people to be able to balance the two. Because if you don't have it, sometimes you're not get noticed. You don't get to be noticed.
So no matter how you know how to write your CV, though you may be called for the job interview, but you may not get the job. And if you also don't write a good resume, you may also not be called for the interview at all.
Exactly, because your resume is actually the first point of call. Every organization that publish or advertise a role is expecting that you send your resume to them, which they look at first. And then based on your ability to meet the criteria or requirement for the role, then you are called for an interview. So
Right.
it is very necessary.
Very necessary. We've mentioned two things here: curriculum vitae, that we usually say CV,
Yeah, sure.
and we've also mentioned resume. Are they different?
I'm glad you're asking this question. There's a clear difference between resumes and CVs, but because we've come to use it interchangeably, a lot of people think it's acceptable too. But a resume is actually most of the time what you use for your job search, and it's a brief document that talks about your skills and your experiences, if I should say. So the difference between a resume and a CV actually first and foremost has to do with the purpose for which it's been written, and then we talk about the length. Usually resumes are supposed to be a one-page document. CVs are more than 2-3 that talks about your history, and usually for CVs it's more useful in the academic domain or medical field, where you add to all that you've written, your publications, if you've done some, your research papers, and then the educations you've had. So it's more focused on your achievement, your publication, your researches, and that's the difference. So the length of it and the purpose of it establish the difference between the two. So when you're looking for a job, actually what you are expected to send out there, which we do most of the time, is the resume.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, when you are writing, so it means that for today, our focus is on resumes.
It's on resumes, yes.
Wow. Okay, so then you've already mentioned that that is used for in search of job. So maybe if you can explain to us again, when we talk about a resume, what exactly are we talking about?
So a resume is supposed to be a one-page document that tells the potential employer of your skill sets and then your experiences. Especially when you have had maybe more than 5 years, 6 years experiences, then sometimes you're expected to go to maybe a 2-page document. But because you see, as a recruiter or an HR manager has barely about 6 seconds to look at your CV or your resume, because you're not the only one who sends resume for jobs, you see. So if the recruiter or the HR manager has just about 6 seconds to look at your resume, obviously it's not the length of what you've written that is going to get the attention of the recruiter, but the substance of it. And you are required to try as much as possible to put that on one page, a maximum 2 or 3.
Okay,
that is depending on the experience of the person involved.
Okay then. So how do you then, before you even write your CV, what are some of the things you ought to do?
Yeah, great question. Many people apply for many different jobs with the same resume. And that is one fundamental mistake a lot of people make. So before you even put a resume out there for a particular job, you want to look at the requirement of the specific job, the job role, and then the competencies required. So you don't end up sending the same CVs that does not match with the requirement or the competencies that the company is looking for. Once you do that, your CV has a tendency of being missed most of the time, because when a recruiter is looking out for a potential candidate to put in a place of in a role, they are looking for the person who matches the competencies and the requirement for that specific role. So before you even start writing a resume to send for a specific job role, you want to look at and compare with the requirement and the competencies, and then find out if you've had experiences that reflect that. So then that guides you in putting a resume together that reflects what they want.
Okay, so you should look at the job requirements. But I know some people, they just write CV, they print it, not any specific job, but they went company by company by depositing their CVs. In that case, are you not going to get a call at all?
So for those people, that's like, I've met one guy last week who was speaking. We understand what you're saying, but we are just trying our luck. When it comes to job search, you can't just be trying your luck. You need to be very intentional about it. Because whilst you are trying to leverage on luck, there are people who are being intentional. People actually go for grooming lessons in how to, which is a service most organizations provide, and they groom you to ace an interview. So there are people who are doing that. So you can't sit back and just say, I'm trying my luck. Yeah, there are other organizations that usually allow for graduate trainee programs. So most of the time they ask people to just send in their CVs, and based on, again, the availability or the opening within the company, you may have a call to prove yourself in an interview. But if you are using HR organizations or agencies that are recruiting for organizations, you need to be intentional about it, because they actually publish jobs. And when they publish it, it comes with what? Requirement and the competencies. And you have to make sure you meet those competencies and requirements.
So since it is a one-page document and maybe at most 2 based on your experiences, what should go into a CV and what should not be added?
Well, when it comes to that, that's when you see the mistakes a lot of people make with their CV. That's resumes. That's why they don't get called for interview. So you hear people say, I've applied for a lot of jobs, but they don't get to call me. It's because you are not writing the resume right. When a recruiter picks your resume, the first thing he or she looks at is the top center of your resume. That place is supposed to communicate your competencies, your skills and experience in summary, in 2 sentences or at least 3. Now, that is a place many people usually put what we call objectives. And when the objectives they place there, they are talking about what they want out of the jobs. But Paul, no company or no employer will employ you because of what you necessarily want out of the job. They are also looking at what you will offer the company. So what is your offer? So that place actually is supposed to capture your professional experience, professional summary. All right, that tells the recruiter what you are good at, what your capabilities are, what your experience are, what your skill set are and competencies are. So 2 sentences or 3 sentences, that captures it. Now, one other thing a lot of people end up doing, especially most of the time the graduates, is that they go onto the internet and they look out for samples and then they just dab. Now, dabbing does not help you, because what you're supposed to put there should reflect you. It should speak about you, what you are good at, what your experience has been, what your competence is. So that has to do with self-awareness. All right. So that's the first point of call for any recruiter. That's where they look out for. And then they roll further to other things on the CV, which I believe we'll be talking about.
Okay, so let's go straight into the other things on the CV. You'll talk about the first part, which should be your experiences and competences. That should be, say, about 2 or 3 sentences summarizing what you are able to do. Okay, so what other things?
But before even the summary comes, what you should clearly capture is your name and also phone number. Because people send CVs without their phone numbers. How can you be contacted? Apart from maybe the mails, sometimes you send mails and they don't even respond to it. But if you're really intentional about it, have your number there. If not, have somebody's number that you can we can reference. So if we not getting through to you, we can get through to that person. So that captured, then you have your professional summary. Then the next is your experience. Many people are fan of putting education first. Now, yes, indeed, if you went to maybe one of the best schools in the world, maybe Harvard, you may want to let the person you may want to catch the person's attention with that. But if not, the key thing is your experience, because that speaks to your substance, that speaks to your value that you bring into the company. So we talk about your experience. And in your experience, you should state the position you are presently at. It starts actually from your current role. So you should put your current role there, the organization you're working for, and then the year you started, you know, and then in that descending order. So back to your career history. So after that, the job you had before that one, you put that also there. But let's take the very first one. So assuming you picked for the position you are in right now, and then your job role, that's your job role, the company you are with, the date you started. Then the next thing you should capture, bulleted, should be what we call your achievements. Now, your achievements should be intertwined with your role. A lot of people are used to writing the job description. Now, employers know the job description already. Now, so if you want to prove to a potential recruiter that you are good at what they have just published or advertised, then you want to tell the recruiter what you did in that particular role. So you see a lot of people listing all the job description, but we know that already. So in that particular role, what did you achieve? So when writing that particular side of the CV, we expect you to use what we call power verbs. Power verbs.
Okay.
Power verbs are strategic words that you use to communicate your worth to the employer. So if you were a salesperson, you want to use numbers that are convincing. You want to use percentages. Quantify what you're writing. It's not all about being wordy. A lot of people are writing so much, using big words. It's not what it is. It's the substance of what you did. So a salesperson will talk about the fact that I increased sales by this percentage or by this number of goods. So use those words. Increase, demonstrate, initiated, implemented. That shows that you did something. Okay. Right? That speaks to your track record, because we look at your track record to predict your ability to do the job. So if you've done it before, the possibilities of you doing it and doing it right is high. Again, it shows that probably if you met some challenges, how you went about it, you will be able to go about it this time around if you're very innovative and solution driven. So that again is the next thing you need to capture. So for all the roles that you're going to state that you've worked in before, we want to see that. Okay, because when a recruiter or you are at an interview, that is what they'll be looking at to ask you questions. Okay, you said you did this and did this. Tell us about it. What are some of the challenges you have? Probably they may ask, then you speak to it. You know, so it shows you have an understanding of the role. You have an understanding of the industry. You have an understanding of even the business or the company in which you're going into. Wow. So that is the first place you need to, first thing you need to capture in your experiences.
Great. So this is Live Chat with Paul, and today we are discussing how to write a compelling resume. We've just learned the difference between a CV and a resume. So how to write a compelling resume to end you that job that you really want. And we have our numbers on our screens, so you can call and make your contributions or ask your questions on this, and Edem will definitely provide you a powerful answer. Yeah, so you talk about the you said power verbs also. So like I implemented, I initiated, I did this, I did that. Okay, great. So what other things?
So you see, another thing companies or potential employees don't want to see in your CV, your resume, is the gaps. So sometimes you're working and then you stopped working for a while. They want to see continuity. So you make sure that there are no gaps in your career growth. That's why for especially the graduates, one of the things we are advising them to do now is to try to take up internship opportunities whilst they are in school. You see, because you can gain all the knowledge whilst you are in school. But when it comes to practical experience, they don't have it. And so when jobs are advertised and we're asking for a number of years of experience, it's not necessarily just about the years. It's about the capability to do the job or to execute. And companies are recruiting because there are problems that needs to be solved. There are jobs that needs to be done. So you don't expect to come there just with your knowledge without ability to execute. But if you were doing an internship whilst you were in school, maybe the first year, when you're on vacation, you decide to go and work with any of the companies, you are likely to gain some skills. So I was trying to share with you last 2 weeks, if I had 2 people, all right, come in for an interview with me for an HR officer or HR executive role, and they're just new graduates. Now, possibility of me asking them if they've done anything in this particular role before is high. One who had not done internships at all is likely to tell you only about the theories. Oh, our lecturer taught us about this. Oh, the process is this, the process is that. But one who probably did an internship in an HR department with an organization is likely to have sat in an interview session. All right, so when companies are recruiting, probably he'll be given something to do, help with the profiling, help with the shortlisting. So he has gained a skill. All right. If we're having training, he's likely to coordinate training programs, write proposals. And so when he comes for an interview and you asked him, he's likely to speak to it. He'll tell you, oh, when I did an internship with this company, I did this, I did this. So when a job is advertised or when we are doing recruitment, this is the first thing we do. We first advertise. So he speaks to what the job and the implementation process. So you realize that he will stand out.
Wow. So what should you do? For example, somebody is working and all of a sudden the person is have no job again, or let's say you lose your job, then maybe within a year, you've not been able to secure any other job or any other internship. What do you do with that? Because
You can
there are no
volunteer.
gaps.
Paul, you can volunteer. You see, sometimes we are fan of putting money before everything. But the worth or your pay usually also is included in the kind of experience you receive. So actually, when companies are designing salary package, they all have different variables they use to calculate that. But for some people, experience is major. So we're saying that don't just be redundant and say there's nothing to do or companies are not taking me on. You can start something on your own. You can volunteer. You can do internships. So, and people are also fan of not including that in their resume.
Okay.
You don't have to overlook it. It's an experience you gain. It gave you some skills. It gave you some experience. So you should be able to capture that on the CV. So the resume, you see, I keep using CV and resume.
Yes,
because we use the word,
of course.
But we should know the clear difference between the two. So after listing your experience, the next thing you want to talk about is probably your volunteer experience. Because again, it speaks to the issues of skills and it speaks to the issues of what? Experiences. So list them, your achievement. When you volunteer, what did you do specifically? All right, quantify if you can. All right, speak to the achievements, talk about the results that you had when you were serving in that particular role. And then now we come to the education.
Okay.
All right, and then again, you start with the recent one. So the recent, but even with the education, if you have professional qualifications, they are actually more valued than the academic education.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's believed that when you do professional programs, you have some practical understanding of the job. All right, that's why you realize that most of these accountants, those who are doing these chartering courses, they seems to be priced high on the market because there's a value in those programs that they do. So you put that one out there, you list the programs you read and the school you read it and then the year. So begin where the year you began and then when you ended. And also if the role requires something you studied within that program, you should be able to list it. All right. So if you're a clinical psychologist, the role is a clinical psychologist, and you read something in clinical psychology, you should be able to highlight that. All right. So it's not just about putting facts there. There should be a narrative. There should be a flow of thought that puts value on your CV. So your resume. So when the recruiter picks your resume, he's able to see the value that you are bringing to the organization.
So, for example, some people do certain programs at the universities, and yet when they come out, they divert in their area of studies to other areas to work. So, if you are being required to submit a resume, or if you are applying for a job, and maybe your experiences has to do with where you have worked, do you necessarily have to bring what you studied in school, which may not necessarily be connected to the job you're applying for?
Well, I'm glad you're asking this question. And you see, again, it's because many people are one-dimensional in their thinking. Now, somebody gets a job in an organization, probably he read accounting, but now he's working and he realized that he develops a new passion altogether. He wants to go into HR. But he doesn't have qualifications for HR, he's no experience in HR. What do you do whilst trying to nurture this desire and passion for HR? You have HR people in your company. So we talk about shadowing. You can actually shadow. You can actually also pick jobs from your colleagues who are in the HR department. Speak to them every now and then. They have jobs on their table sometimes they need help with. You can speak to anybody. Can you help me? Can I help you with this? What is required to do this? So whilst you are doing your job, but you see what it means is that you're going to sacrifice. You're going to go the extra miles, which a lot of people don't want to do. But if it's something you really want, then you want to do that. So you see, whilst you're doing that, what are you gaining? You are gaining what? Skills. You are gaining experience in execution. I hope you get the
next. I do get it, but how will the employer believe you? For example, I am working here, then maybe I go to the HR department. There are certain jobs that I do, but it is not part of my duties. So when I'm applying for an HR position, I know that, okay, in my previous work, this is what I was doing. How would the employer also believe that, okay, apart from my job as a presenter, I also volunteered or also did something at the HR department just to help my colleagues or something like that?
So, Paul, like we said, first and foremost, it should be reflected on your resume.
Okay.
All right? And then, when you go for an interview, like we mentioned last 2 weeks, it's an assessment. It's a conversation. Now, intents and desires and passions and experiences are revealed in your conversation during interviews. So if the recruiter asked you questions and you are speaking specifically to the issues, obviously he's able to tell if you really had an experience in those areas and skills developed in that or not.
Wow.
You see, example, we're interviewing some people about last 2 weeks for an HR role, and we asked them if they could design performance management tools. Some of them said, yes, oh, this is what they've done. Okay, fine. So take us through the process. Now, they were asked to practically demonstrate. If you've had an experience in it, whilst you're speaking, you will use some terms, you will use some of the languages that applies to that particular design. So obviously, the recruiter will be able to tell that, yes, you have the skill set and the experience in this particular thing.
Wow. So are there other things about you? Now we are talking about the school, your
So we're talking about the schools, yes.
So after that, okay.
After the education, then maybe you may want to speak to issues of that's again. Don't forget you have one page. So you want to put the most important things out there that that aligns with the job role that has been advertised. So if you have some other skill sets that you think are applicable to this particular job that you're applying for, you want to put that out there. You're a problem solver if there are innovative things that you did, because employers are looking for leaders and innovation in their work. So if you are an innovator, if you are a leader, you have some skill sets that is not directly linked to the things you did, but you know they are very important. You want to highlight all of that also on your CV. And then again, one major mistake a lot of people do is to put people's name as reference when they've not talked to them.
Okay.
You don't do that. Before you put somebody's name on your resume for a referee or as reference, you should be able to speak to the people first and let them know anytime you're going for an interview that I'm going for an interview. If they are available, if you can send them a text message, send them a mail, just let them know that you're going for an interview. Because it's very embarrassing when you call people who have been placed as for reference and they don't know anything about the candidate that you are speaking to. So don't just put it there because probably he's your father's friend or you thought he was your boss. And then again, people put the present place that they are working. They want a change of job, but they are putting their current employer or manager as a reference. And your manager doesn't know that you are going you actually want to leave him. Very embarrassing situation. So you would want to also be careful about that. You don't want to put somebody's name out there that you know can create.
But do you always have to put a reference? You
see, the purpose of reference, a lot of people have missed it, is to speak to your credentials. So again, most preferably, you're expected to put a manager you've worked with before, or supervisor, somebody that worked closely with you, who can vouch for the fact that you've done a similar work in that capacity. So if given another opportunity, you would be able to do that. You don't have to lie about it, and don't just put anybody's name there, because again, integrity is important to every company. So if you're already showing some dishonesty and you can't be trusted right by the references you provide, then I'm sorry you're missing it.
Well, I'm sorry you're missing it. I'm told our time is fast spent. I don't know whether you have quick final words, then we can.
Yeah, I just want to tell our graduates out there and also professionals who are actually seeking for new opportunities that, be intentional about your job search and don't give up. Usually when you send your resumes and you are called for interview and you don't get the job, try to find out where you were, where your challenges were and the reasons for which you are not picked. So then you can review and reassess yourself and rightly position yourself for the next possible opportunity that comes your way.
Thank you. Don't give up. That's the most important thing. Do not give up. And that's Kweku Edem Damanka, and he's on social media, Facebook as Kweku Edem Damanka, right?
Oh, the social media name is TheMan Damanka.
What?
TheMan Damanka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can catch up and then we talk some more.
All right, okay. So if you want more information, you can get in touch with the man at Damanka and